Kia ora, and welcome to Lunch on the Way. We're three guys doing theology over lunch, and sometimes we do that with others. We want to warn you, though, that what's said here is not yet complete, because like any good conversation, you never want it to end. So hey, join us for lunch on the way.
Thanks, Graeme, for that intro. Good job, Graeme. And welcome to our premiere episode or conversation of Lunch on the Way.
It's a goodie.
Oh man,
it's a goodie.
It's a goodie, but I feel a bit like we hit some heavy stuff. We touched on some heavy stuff. Mm-hmm. And I know if you're listening to this right now, you don't really know who we are, or you do because only our friends and family and colleagues are listening to this, which is completely understandable. But I'm Joey Millington. To my right is Jonathan Hoskins, and to my left is Graeme Flett. And what we do is we have conversations over lunch, and we just decided to record these conversations. We either are or used to be pastors. We're all into theology. We all have different degrees about theology and biblical studies and thinking about things and philosophy, but that doesn't really matter too much because we just like to have good conversations. Mm-hmm. And we try to get somewhere. We want to get somewhere, and we're not quite sure where that somewhere is, but you're welcome to join us along the way to hopefully, be more faithful disciples of Jesus in the context in which we're living. But we just had a good conversation, Jonathan. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know, what do you want to say around that before we really get into it?
Yeah, what were we talking about? I think we were talking about our attention. Where's the church's attention at the moment? Is it in the right place? Are we listening to the Spirit? Are we following where Jesus is going? And I think we had a big, massive conversation around this. Maybe we got somewhere, maybe we didn't. That'll be for you to decide. But we had a good time doing it.
Yeah, how about you, Graeme?
Well, I think we talked about what's happening and that sort of thing. We chipped on things like place, time, connection were words that we were trying to tease out. Yeah. And then we also, these ideas, and then going, well, what does that look like in church? I'm not sure we answered that. But our attempt to do that. And I think, we again, this is a wrestling. We're trying to wrestle with things and trying to find language for things that are really sitting in our hearts that we're trying to figure out. So we hope you today, and listening to this, that somehow that opens a pathway for you to start talking and explore.
Yeah, because there's a big shift happening not only across the world, but also within New Zealand, and we're just trying to figure that out. And we hope that you can help us out. What you can do to, I guess, be a part of the conversation, really, and to start this thing rolling off, is comment within anywhere you might have a comment option around your own thoughts and opinions, and we might even bring it up in some conversations to come in our intros before we really get into the topic of conversation. Also, if you wouldn't mind, a map just fell behind me. This map has been up there, Graeme, for the last what?
It's inviting you to it's an Auckland map.
It's an Auckland map.
What it's saying.
Auckland's falling. I'm just kidding.
I'm just being attentive to the map falling and trying to figure out what that means. But I don't know.
Oh, anyway, but what would really help us out is if you think this is a valuable thing for other people, not just because we want ourselves to be projected on the internet more than we already are. If you think this is valuable and this conversation is helpful, what we would love for you to do is write a review on whatever platform you're using and to review, the podcast. And it really does go a long way with the algorithm lord, whoever that might be. So anyway, here's that conversation we just had over lunch.
So churches in New Zealand, there's a lot of things on the table for us at the moment and what we're kind of thinking about. And really my question was just to say, what are we not paying attention to that we might actually want to pay attention to? There's a lot of buzz out here at the moment. News is, taking up a lot of bandwidth in our own minds, in our churches' minds, so much going on. And really, I think getting this from Ian McGilchrist, that attention is a moral kind of choice. What is it that we aren't paying attention to? That perhaps maybe God is working in the background somewhere, that we as a church in New Zealand maybe could start paying attention to. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, I think I like that.
I like that. I'm not sure where to go. But
exactly. I don't know either. That's why, I mean, really, I don't even know where to go. This is such a question.
So let's just frame it. All right.
How would you frame it?
I feel like, I don't know how much this is going to use. I might use this whole thing because we're just trying to figure this out.
Yeah.
So this is just the felt need, right? I told a story a month or so ago about the guy who came and investigated how to be baptized and be discipled a part of a church, right?
Yeah.
And how many churches he asked that to just basically said, come on Sunday morning, even though what he really needed was a cup of coffee with a pastor. And no one wanted to do that. So clearly there's things that we are focusing on that we maybe should loosen up a little bit, and there's things that we're not focusing on that we need to. And there's a shift happening, is what my perception is, over the last 3 years, longer, probably decades, but it's been very acute at this moment for some reason. And I feel like within the circles of pastors I talk to in Auckland, the dust is settling, and they're just getting their head above the dust cloud as church leaders. And even them, they don't really know. They're still trying to feel their way through the dust a little bit, and they don't know where to land, because I think their value structure has been kind of not flipped upside down, but has been challenged during COVID, and it forces them to reevaluate their theology as it informs their methodology. So I agree with you, Jonathan. I think that what's the thing that we are focusing on that we might need to not let go of, but have a lighter grip of? Mm-hmm. And what are the things that we need to grab onto and get a really tight grip on and really focus on? And I guess, I'll share that story. I think it's good for the audience to hear a bit of that story. So basically there was this, the catalyst around this whole thing was there was this person who came from a world religion background, and they became a Christian through a mentor. And essentially they didn't go to a church, and the mentor was saying, you need to go to a church. Well, they've been in the country about a year, and so they looked online, looked on different live streams, as you do nowadays, and they determined a handful of churches that they wanted to get in contact with to say, hey, I want to get baptized, I want to be discipled, and I want to belong. And they emailed numerous churches, and the natural response was, just come on Sunday morning, feel things out, see if you like the place, see if you like what we do, and then we'll go from there. Go through our connections process, fill out a connection card. Maybe we'll do a next steps class with you. It's kind of the method is that for new entry people coming in. But this guy, all he wanted to do was have a conversation with a pastor who he saw on the live stream because he wanted to get baptized and belong at a church. And he was very committed. And it was my senior pastor who said, yeah, come by the office, let's have a coffee. And then that got the ball rolling. But when he told me that story and how many churches he got in contact with, I was just floored. And that brings us back to what you mentioned, Jonathan. Mm-hmm. What are the things that we're holding on too tightly that we need to loosen up on? And what are the things that we may have lost grip of over the decades or centuries that we need to hold firmly once again? Mm. It's open season, boy. What is it? We've had this conversation before, but maybe it's good to revisit it because it's kind of a catalyst.
Well, I mean, that desire to connect with somebody just speaks to me of humanity, mm-hmm. and our humanity of being human. I guess the flip side of that is, the programs and the structures, they're the machinery that just works. And actually here it didn't really work, which raises the question, about relying on the machinery to do what's actually human. It's not to say it's human. People still organise. Human people still organise things, but in one way the form goes out of it. The form's in it. I'm using another idea here, but the kind of zing and splendour's gone. Mm-hmm. It's just like, I could do all those things, but I just want to connect with somebody. I just want to relate, mm-hmm. which is a very human thing to do. And I wonder whether we've forgotten about that.
Yeah. And this isn't like big church versus small church. This is, because even like, this is how I was trained in ministry, was actually to figure out how to find myself within the system and to get people from point A to point B and stay within that system of discipleship and not kind of go beyond it for what was most efficient and what got the most people in the door and in the seats, if really.
Mm-hmm.
And I will admit that if that person emailed me, I may have been very tempted to say, "Oh, come on Sunday morning," as opposed to actually addressing the real need that this person had. What do you think, Jonathan?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sitting here trying to think. Okay, so how do we pay attention to things we're not paying attention to? Because the irony here is that how are you even going to know that you're not paying attention to something if you're not paying attention to it?
Yeah.
And I wonder if part of this is that we, as a church, broadly speaking, that we've forgotten how to respond. We're not in the business of responding to honest and open questions anymore, or we're not in the business to respond to crisis anymore, even though perhaps we think we are. Well, what we are really good at doing, where our attention really lies, is setting agendas. But when you set an agenda, it's your agenda that you're setting, and often you're not responding to other people's agendas. And I wonder if part of moving our focus is learning to listen and respond to other people's agendas.
That's not very efficient, Jonathan.
It's not efficient, and it seems weak, and it seems unpowerful. But I'm going to put it out here and say, perhaps it's a gospel stance, that it's not the agenda setting that we should be doing. It's the response to other people who are already in positions.
See, this strikes me as just trying to wind it right back to what is.
To something, yeah.
Rather than kind of quickly defaulting to, I've got this and you do this and this will how it'll all work.
Yeah.
And it's actually really simplifying it. The person ring up. What does he want? He wants to talk to somebody. Okay. We'll go and talk to him. I mean, yet I know what happens because I've been there myself. You think, how do I need to get him in? And But actually, that's what he wanted. But it wasn't even what he wanted. It sounds like what he needed. Yeah.
He needed someone to talk to.
So
I'm sorry, I'm using the word agenda here, but really, it's what he needed.
Yeah,
he needed someone. He needed it. And when taking away the words agenda now, what do the people in our neighborhoods need? Not what do we want to give them.
Yeah.
What do they need? Let's just start. Let's just start there.
You strip it all back. What's the need?
Yeah, because I wonder. I don't know. What do you think, man? Is this even possible?
No, it's possible.
Does it ring right with you, or
there's like a tension around. There's a tension between staying on mission and staying on vision versus letting the needs set the. If we'll use the word agenda.
Yeah, this is the good pushback. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're right.
So there's a tension there because I don't think that everybody and all the needs should set the agenda, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think there is a listening that needs to happen to then help you reflect on what your mission and vision might be. Because if you're, I'm very pragmatic, and if I think about like, all right, so there's a shift that's happening in the church in Aotearoa-New Zealand, and we're trying to discern, and we're just feeling our way through it. All church leaders I'm talking to are trying to figure this out right now. They're feeling their way through the problem. What's the next emerging thing is really what they're thinking. What's the next focus point? What if we had to sum it down, what's the need?
Okay.
And that involves listening to what the need is. I really want to get who back in this conversation so we can really maybe tease that a bit more, but that's quite broad. I mean, that's very cryptic. You'll see whoever's listening. But that's the only pushback I would say. What do you think, Graeme, around like this tension of like vision and mission, but also listening to the need? Because obviously we are a church and we are here to serve, right? The church is to serve the world, really, and to to reflect Christ but serve the world.
There's a
good.
book title that's ringing through my head because the word attention is a really interesting word, and what has our attention. And this particular book is the economy of attention. Economy of attention, and the question is: so what's our economy of attention? What are we attending to? Which is a little bit related to agenda.
Yeah.
Going back a little bit further, and I think this is completely intuitive in the sense that I don't have sort of data to show me, but my interactions with people and doing, pastors' breakfasts, and the thing that kind of comes back to me is the notion of connection. That interplay of connecting with another human being and having a human conversation. So connection, I think, is a really important word to think about here. Is that if are people looking for a connection, and I'm thinking more broadly there. That's, I think, because if you think about what happened with COVID, we were disconnected. Yeah, we had Zoom, we did all the stuff, but actually we were really disconnected. They were saying. I was watching some rugby commentary the other night, and so in South Africa, as in here, the crowds have gone down. People have lost interest in rugby, but since COVID's come back, the stadiums are full.
Yeah.
So what's that?
Yeah.
I think it's something about this. Human beings are social creatures, just longing to find connection. And when you think about that with faith and Christian faith and church, I do. I think. I'm speaking for myself too, probably. There's connection.
Yeah, I think that might be right. What is connection though? I think that's why are people wanting getting connected? And I wonder, and I think this is again, this comes back to my opening question about attention. It's about meaning. We connect with people because we want meaning. We want our lives to have meaning. That's why we connect with each other. That's why people join sports groups. That's why we join bands. That's why we have friends, because we want to find meaning about our lives.
We go to concerts because we want to connect with a large group.
We want to connect.
Yeah.
In fact, that's why people turn up at church.
Yeah.
Because they want meaning.
Newsflash.
and newsflash. And churches are supposed to offer ultimate meaning. So what I'm saying is that when we come back to agenda, attention, are we connecting with people on the level where we're actually engaging with what they desperately want and need? And so, because part of this is, I think, and part of this is what I see churches often doing, is that we just offer another product that gives immediate meaning, but not ultimate meaning. And at some point, that means that we can just fall away from the church, because we will find immediate meaning in other places. We will look for ultimate meaning in other places if we're not addressing ultimate needs, ultimate meaning for people. I don't know if we're doing that.
I think it introduced another idea in here, and what creates this sort of, I think, in the background here of making, and not to be unfair to pastors, pastoral leaders who have X amount of time for a Sunday service, and so didn't the word time just get mentioned? And so time becomes that commodity. How do I make the most of that? And in the attempt to make that efficient and effective, it's scripted.
Yeah.
Well, not literally, but it's kind of, I've got all this, and I've got to get through all this. And it simply takes time to get meaning. If I go to church and I talk to somebody, but really, there's a hello, goodbye, and but it takes time to go to that different level of conversation. And yourself, have I got time to go a little bit deeper? And I know when I pick up a cup of coffee and I sit at a table, yes, I've made, because the space is created time. Oh, it's a little bit more space to find connection, because I'm looking for that time and space to draw out and back and forth.
Yep.
So time is, I think, a big deal.
Yep. I think that's right.
It's a big deal.
I think meaning takes time, I think, but it also takes pointed questions. It also takes vulnerability of actually saying, this is something that's worth us discussing. You know what? Like when I read the news in the morning, I wonder, I say to myself, even though I'm a Christian, I'm a believer, I say, man, is this, is this real? Like, the world is it's falling apart, man. Is this it?
It's not looking good.
It's not looking good.
It's looking good.
It's looking incredibly bad, man. It's looking terrible.
Yeah.
And where do I look for stability? Where do I look for meaning? Where do I look for hope? These are the big questions. I think we've been complacent so long that we've taken it for granted that everything's going to stay the same, and that we've got a basis to talk our Christian meshes off. We say, hey, it's cool, man. I can do high level theology here because I don't really need to talk about, the kind of fear that people have. I don't need to speak to that because I take it for granted that everyone's in a safe place. People aren't in safe places anymore. We're not in a safe place. We need to speak to that.
An interesting thing about this, and just the kind of social sort of interplay of this. My mother really talks about politics or what's going on in the world. So she's in an old people's village, and I suppose they watch the mainstream media. And she says to me 2 days ago, she said, I'm really concerned. She said, it's really worrying what's happening in that war in Ukraine. Yeah, and I got a little glimpse of the anxiety there. Yeah. But you know what I also kind of pick up on this? When you ask where's the meaning, her conversation with me is trying to work that out.
Absolutely.
And I think, it's that we want to take that conversation, like what's happening, as you've said to me, what's happening, what do you think? And we're all trying to gather around it. I think in that notion of it, trying to find meaning in that space is the connection. We're trying to find, where do we sit in this?
Yeah.
And it's not trying to find the answer. This is what's happening in life. And, and I feel anxious about it. Mm-hmm. And do you? Mm-hmm. So where's it going? And so we kind of in that process of a back and forth, we're finding a sense of solidarity, not necessarily an opinion of I think this, oh good, you think the same way as me, but in a conversation that actually is kind of wrestling with what's happening in the midst of the world in which we're in. Mm-hmm. I'm feeling anxious. I don't tell you that, but that's what happening, I think, is that we're trying to figure that out. So, and therein lies, connected.
Yep.
Now, I guess the question is, have we thought about that whole lot?
I think we're reflecting on that right now. I think as a society, I know I'm not a doom and gloom flipping prophet usually, but you're right, Jonathan. It's not looking good. Like there's October, from my understanding, is a pivotal month globally.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things converging, and a lot of big power plays are happening right now. Mm-hmm. And it pushes people to a moment of hopelessness because the dream of society continually progressing and moving forward, whatever forward means, is dying a little bit. Yeah. Like things will always get better. We believed that prior to World War I in the West, and then World War I happened. Yeah. Then World War II happened as a consequence of World War I, and then the Cold War as a consequence of World War II. And then we have this period of the Soviet Union falling, and then we feel like for the last 30 years, things are just going to get better. And if your worldview and if your ethic and if your understanding of the world is just based purely on a material humanist understanding of the world, people are losing hope in that system right now across the globe.
Man, faster than we can even keep up.
Faster than we even keep up. Things are changing so rapidly. I'll give you some stats. This is what's crazy.
Me, man.
You ready for some
Give
stats?
Me some stats.
Yeah.
I don't know when we're gonna.
This is off the top of Joey's head. He doesn't even have a computer in front of him.
I don't have a computer.
Joey.
You're amazing.
I like to think I'm an educated person, but we'll see who's going to fact check this. All right.
Oh, we'll fact check it. All right.
There are tens of thousands of Russian men leaving Russia right now to go to Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Turkey because Russia's conscripting unofficially conscripting men into the military because they're getting desperate.
Yep.
Dude.
Yep.
That's crazy. That's because they're in a war in Europe.
Well, think about, on the Russia front, I mean, it was in our lifetime we heard people talking about nuclear war. And, in my generation, that was a distant memory.
Yeah.
It is
didn't
suddenly
factor. Yeah.
real.
That's the world I grew up in. Because I'm a bit older than all you guys.
It's suddenly real again.
It is.
And we think, surely this couldn't happen again. Surely it couldn't happen. Or we think, basically everything's pretty good. And suddenly we realize that there's people that are that are feeding on other people, really. I mean, this is what, all these billionaires and Russia, it's happening in Italy. I mean, it's really people feeding on the poor.
Yeah.
And you realize, oh my goodness, this has been happening for a long time.
It has.
And it's come to the surface. What's the hope?
Well, I'll give you some more context for
Do it,
lack
man.
of hope.
Lay on some.
So
some more.
there's people, economists are projecting. Obviously, this is not from my authority. This is just from articles of reputable articles I've read that we would expect to trust. That we'll see hundreds of millions of people in famine at some point this fall in Northern Hemisphere fall. And what that means for us is that we probably won't be in famine in the West, but our prices will just go even higher than they currently are. What that means for me is my savings, like my wife and I, have been quite aggressive savers since we've been married. And I went to the grocery store, to the fruit and veg shop, not Pack and Save, but just a corner fruit and veg shop. And I normally get like 10 things and it's usually $25.
Yeah.
And I'm like, sick deal.
Yeah.
I got 3 things the other day and it was $10. And I asked the lady, I'm like, I'm not complaining about your prices because it's everywhere. What's going on?
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm passing past everything because I just know that this is inherently not a good deal, so I'm not even going to pick it up. And the thing is, I think as that becomes an increased reality in people's lives, even here in our context, people are going to feel squeezed, and they're going to feel this, not only financially squeezed, but squeezed of hope a little bit, because that dream of owning a house is now off the table completely because you can't even afford, within the budget you currently have, groceries or petrol or whatever it might be. And it's putting a squeeze on. Thank God, I'm saying this, or not like we're better than anybody, but thank God we probably won't experience a famine in this country. But there are countries that will this year because of all the consequences that have happened. And when we go back to our original question of like, what was it that what the church needs to focus on?
Where's our attention?
Where's our attention as church leaders? And I feel like I know it's easy, it's low-hanging fruit to be critical of the church, and I don't want to be overly critical. I'm a pastor myself, so this is me processing this out loud. 100%. I'm trying to apply this in my own life, all right? 100%. We go gut reaction to the programs that we've always done to try and get the quote-unquote results of what a disciple ought to be, and we point towards Jesus, which is a good thing, and we kind of rinse and repeat that. And a part of me is like, yes, we should, because, I think the church is a consistent presence of hope, and it should be, but is there more? Like, what was that word again? I keep forgetting what you said. Attention. Yeah. Where does the attention need to pivot? Given that we have some global circumstances that are coming onto our shores, not literally, but, literally through financial markets, but not literally through boots on the ground kind of stuff. Where does our attention need to go as the church in this country? And, I'm trying to feel that out with the church in East Auckland where I serve at. Where do we go with that? Because we bring hope. Is that enough? Is it enough just to bring hope? Is that, yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess what's the Christian hope? It might be a very good question to ask. In the midst of all this, that and I'm going to hang it there because I'm not going to answer it. But what is the Christian hope? I do think part of it is that all of us, I mean, here's a side little thing. Driving home yesterday, I'm going, oh my goodness, look at the traffic. Now I live out towards Costco. This is the second biggest. Retail outfit in the world, I think. The traffic. People even camped the night before outside. And I'm going, why? You can still buy toilet paper at the Pack and Save. And on the TV, people, it was the first item on the news. Cheaper. And I just thought, maybe this is something about that kind of utopian vision.
Oh, okay.
Of what we have, right. Of, consumption, so that it's, so... I mean, it's all a whirl. We get it all as whirl. And I was also thinking in a mixed thought too, is the sense of lost hope when you come around to sort of the housing thing. And that's not wrong to have a house. I'm fine. I have a house and I'm good. But I was talking to my daughter the other day, and the whole thing that, if you bought a house recently, you've probably now lost your equity.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So the money you put in a house is gone.
Yeah, you're negative 15% or something.
Yeah, and
probably.
I'm going, that's 100 in Auckland, that's 100,000.
150 plus, potentially, yeah.
Gone. And then I thought, well, that's really unjust.
Yeah.
So, it kind of erodes that sense of, and I think, and this is the tension. We do live in a world that where you got to buy a house to live. It's the way it works. So we're in this tension of living in this world, yet and around this, what is Christian hope and around this? How do we hold that which is material lightly?
You know what?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I need a community to do that with.
Yeah, exactly.
Good thing we're talking.
I struggle with that myself.
Yeah. Well, man, that's a rich response. You know what? The utopian thing, again, I come back to our agendas aligned with the people that we are trying to serve. Because all those people, if we're talking, utopia, they're after a utopian vision that they can keep on consuming, that they need this, they need a break. And are we speaking to what they're after? This is what I was trying to get at with the agenda. Those people are obviously in need and after something. Are we as a church speaking to what they are truly after? Or are we speaking above their heads?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I mean about agenda. And talking about attention, honestly, coming back to where is our attention at the moment? Is it in our stages? Is it in our screens? Is it in our social media outlook? What are we attending to?
Yeah.
Coming back to Christian hope, what is the Christian hope? That the poor this day, that the poor will be fed, that the sick will be healed, and that the hopeless will find hope. That is the Christian hope. Are we speaking to those? Are we acting on those? I don't know.
Well,
that's my question.
What did John the Baptist's disciples say when they went to Jesus and said, "Well,
Exactly.
are you the one who's to come?" And then he said, "Well, cast out
That's right.
the demons,
That's right.
healed the blind,
Yeah.
the lame walk, all those good things,
Exactly.
right? There's a physical material thing, but I know we can go so many different places, and I think it might be a history of like a dichotomy between like what's spiritual and what's material, and a bit of like a dualism in a sense that plays into that,
100%.
where it's like the evangelical real missional church. We focus on people's souls because they're going to go. They're going to go to hell,
100%.
and we need to make sure they go to heaven.
Yep.
And yes, true statements, no doubt. But a person is a whole embodied person, right? With a body and a mind and a soul, spirit, all that stuff. And I'm just talking out loud now, but
I think you're on the right path.
Yeah, and I'm just like. I'm like, so what is specifically, I guess, my church's role, if I want to get very particular, like within this sense of a growing sense of hopelessness? I think in the media, we're still trying, I think the media is still having a conversation on, our hope, like our destination is just around the corner.
Yep.
It's just around the corner. It's just around the corner. And what's actually happening, I think, in our context here and in our context across the world as a global context, is that just around the corner is becoming more and more distant, and people are buying into that less and less. So if I'm thinking of where's the focus, where do we need to put our attention? I think it might be taking people's attention away from that thing around the corner, that utopian vision of a humanistic materialism, and focusing it somewhere else. I'm trying to think of an analogy. Instead of focusing up around the corner, potentially focusing, I guess, on the cross, if you want to be cliche, but it's true.
Yeah.
But practically, what does that look like?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I have ideas, but these are ideas that that we've done for the past decade or two. Do things need to change, or do we just need to do things that are old? Yeah.
I think, I wonder practically. I think hope is awakened when we can truly lament about the brokenness of something. there's nothing to hope for if you don't feel like you need to be hoping. First of all, you need to uncover what's going on. If there's a wound, you need to show the wound. You need to dress the wound, because the wound can't heal if you don't first uncover it or say that it's there. So I think that's part of what we do as part of the practicalness that we do as churches, is we need to address what is going on in the world at the moment. We need to fully stand up and say it's broken, not in a theological kind of way, but name the brokenness, and then say, let's address it. Because if you can't ground hope, it's just hopeless.
Yeah, and a play on the word, I get that.
Yeah,
so
because etymologically, utopia means no place.
Yeah, if you actually look at the word, it means no place, because it actually doesn't exist.
Utopias don't exist.
No.
You've got to ground it.
Yeah. I guess my question there is like, how? I agree, but then I go, well, here's a strange story. Sunday I'm driving to church. I'm looking forward to going to church. So come across the mothers in central Auckland. And just as we're kind of going down the side street to church, sort of up around, there's this homeless person walking on. He's got a blanket and stuff. And then I sort of talk about, I wonder where he's going, what is he? And I said, I think he's a homeless person. I wonder how many people are there. And then we drive down the road, pull in church, and I forget about it. But I'm kind of confronted with that. I probably need to talk about that, because actually, you know what I mean? Because I'm confronted when I go, do you know what? To be honest, I'm really powerless. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
I'm not sure even I can relate to the person. Can I solve a problem? So there's a kind of a sense of, I don't know. And then I do my church thing. I go to church. Now that's all good, but actually, I've really engaged with the world that I'm in. Yeah. And so when I think about that image, I feel like it's quite confronting for me, actually.
Yeah.
And then I think, well, you say, well, we need to lament, but how are we going to do that? What does that look like, Jonathan?
Do you know what? I mean, the church has the resources.
Yeah.
We are a people that lament. If we come back to the Psalms, if we come back to Jesus himself, we are the people that lament. Who for? For the world. We are the people that no one's going to cry out if we don't cry out. That we have the resources. We need to put them into the field again, because we've set them on the sideline for so long because we're so triumphant. We're people of triumph, but honestly, man, it's going to wear thin when the world's falling apart. We need to lament, and then when we lament, we can show them why we still have hope. That's what we need to do. We've got it. Let's put it to work. But I also think we need to start pulling out our people of our heroes. Let's talk about the Martin Luther Kings again. Let's talk about the Bonhoeffers again. Let's talk about Dorothy Day again, Florence Nightingale, Augustine. Let's pull these people back out and speak about them, because I think we've lost our heroes, our Wilberforces. Let's talk about them again. Where are our heroes? Where are the people we look up to that lamented and did something about it? That's what I wonder. That's where our attention needs to be, I think. Deep lament and strong hope. I wonder. What do you think? I don't know, man. I'm waxing on here, but
the really interesting thing there is we need to dig out the stories.
Yeah,
and I think it's a really interesting comment. The stories that have been.
Yeah.
And I guess that
we've been here before.
Yeah. So those stories in difficult times that we bring them out. I mean, that I guess if you were to take in the notion of, church is a week, but we gather on a Sunday. So how do we bring that into a place of worship?
Yeah, you're getting practical and pragmatic here. What's that actually look like?
I mean, the Catholic and Orthodox Church do this so well, I think, and it's something that we can learn as evangelicals. They hold the saints up. They have saints' days. And and for us that can sound a little bit strange, but what it really is showing these are the lives that shone brightly with the truth of God. That's what a saint is. That's simply what it is. You know what? They're the scum of the earth usually, but they shone brightly, and they put them up on their walls. They talk about them throughout the year because these people become our heroes, people for us then to emulate, that perhaps maybe we can become heroes of the faith. That's what I think. That's what I think we could learn. That's what I think we could do practically. Start talking about these people, because otherwise we're going to look at our celebrities, we're going to look at our sports players. Those are going to be our heroes. That's the lives we're going to follow. It's simple as that, really. It's mimesis, man.
Yeah,
it's desire.
Yeah,
if we don't give real people to desire, real people to follow, they're going to follow someone.
It really strikes me as he is thinking a little bit about, time and our place in time.
Yeah.
And I wonder whether sometimes we've forgotten about that our place in history. And partly because we've forgotten history.
Yeah.
I live in this part of time, and as we've seen in the death of the Queen, there's a passing of not. I mean, time is continuous,
one era,
but there's
to
kind of an era,
Yeah.
and so she was of that era, and so I guess in a more micro way of congregational life, of thinking our place here in this place at this time. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Which then brings us back to, yes, we've got the macro context of the world that we're living in, but we've also got that sort of more micro context of our own place and time.
Yeah.
And those stories that are kind of, the great story of Martin Luther King. We got dozens. Florence Nightingale, William Booth. And these are big times, but there's lots of little ones too.
Yep.
Of people with call in their life. I've got a book on
St. Patrick.
Yep, St. Patrick.
Redeem that one. I've got to redeem that story.
I've got a book on my shelf that one of my colleagues is after, because it's an old book called Mary Celeste.
Yeah.
Nobody knows who Mary Celeste is, but she's a woman that went off to Africa, East Africa, and made a mark. And you go. So I'm going. But I do think it's. I wonder whether it's a little bit of we've gotten our place in time, and in one sense, I think our. The utopia, if utopia means there is no place, what's the opposite of that? Is place.
Yeah.
So what is our place here at this time?
And that's exactly why I think we're going through a massive shift right now. And I think everyone's feeling it. And you just said it. We feel we don't know our place right now. There's a tradition that we've been carrying on for the past, 50 years maybe within evangelical church of what it looks like to be the church or to model discipleship to Jesus. We've been living this story for 50 years of, it was a good story, to be honest. It worked in the sense of it was seeker sensitive, invitational, bring people in. We need to give them opportunities to meet Jesus, which is awesome. That's great. And I think things have shifted dramatically in our culture where the path of least resistance is not the church anymore as the place I go to for hope. And that's the problem. To be honest, we had a conversation a while back about this, but the path of least resistance is for people between the age of 15 and 40 probably, Buddhism or secular Buddhism, to be honest, more life management. So as a church, knowing that the context in the soil in Aotearoa is very hard, and people do not default in moments of hopelessness and crisis to the church anymore. Some will, but majority won't, to be completely honest. What is our role then? Is it just to continue to be those bearers of hope within our community? Is it to really hunker down and disciple our people extremely well to then go beyond the church? And if that's the case, what does that look like? Is it a program? Is it more organic through deep connection with people, like you've mentioned, Graeme? Is it is it a slow, not burn, but a slow kind of grind, and where the gears are just getting into motion, and we're in the first couple decades of we don't really see a lot happening, but we're doing a lot, and we feel like we're doing the right thing, but we're not seeing a lot of fruit from it. Or we're not seeing there's a harvest to reap. And are we, here's a real, I think a bigger question, are we prepared to not be that generation that reaps a harvest? Where we might not, I think I'm coming to terms with this, where I think my role, if you were talking what you just said, Graeme, my role in this era as a church leader might be to just get the ground ready for, my kids or the kids after my kids, to do something significant and really reap that harvest like you saw in the 70s potentially in New Zealand, or 50s with the Pentecostal movement and stuff like that. I don't think my role is to reap. I think it's really to sow and to try and do that well.
I think coming back to Scripture again, that the book of Revelation, it's a complex book, but the thing about Revelation that I think is the message: be faithful in the difficult spaces. And we know through the role of the metaphors and images that we've got in Revelation, but the call to be faithful. And I think if we ask that question, then I think around this too, to acknowledge the lament that you talk about, Jonathan, is this deep sense of humility of who we are. That humility is like, oh, you know what? I don't. It's a kind of a raw honesty. I'm not very good with cliches. I tend to, as I've got older, inwardly I react. I smile, but I do hear a lot of Christian cliches. You just need to get the church going, and I'm going, I just want to yell sometimes. Look, let's just be honest. How you doing? And that kind of raw honesty, that humility, because in that place there is that informal lament of where I'm actually telling the truth. And I'm saying, I really am genuinely sincere about following Jesus, but I just don't want to go through the routines of saying all the things and pretending. And I think that's the lament, and there we can do what I call the small gestures of the kingdom, that are that genuine hospitable posture to the other. What's your story? Where are you at? That, I think, is a building block. I think that's around connection too.
Yeah, I would pick up on that, and I think what was your initial question? What do we do as a church now?
Yeah, what do we do as a church now? Like, what's our role in this era, and what do we do practically?
My sense is this. I see what you think. I think there's a lot of fires burning everywhere, and I mean those as Holy Spirit fires.
Yeah,
I think there's a lot of fires burning at the moment, and my feel is that there's a lot of people out there doing a lot of good things, and that the role of the church would be to support them, because my feel is that there's not one big thing here, that it's to watch for things sparking.
Yeah,
I think the Spirit is moving in people's lives in small ways. Jump on it, follow it.
Yeah,
go with the Spirit. Whatever's happening there, do it. Do it. If it falls over, don't worry. That you did it was the right thing. Watch for the sparks in the fire and go with the wind.
Yeah.
That's my feel is what the church needs to do.
I think you're right.
And I feel like our roles at the moment are not to put on productions, but to facilitate the Spirit moving.
Facilitate.
Yeah. When you see it, support it. No matter what it looks like, if it's got the feel of the Spirit on it, man, get in and just fan it into flame, whatever it is. And my feel is that it's almost like a New Testament kind of moment where the fire has spread out, and we don't know what it's going to do. That's not our role to know what the Spirit's doing, but it's to follow the Spirit, and just to, if it's fanning, get in. That's my feel.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it fits with what you were saying, Graeme. People have honest questions. Man, they have an honest question because the Spirit's working in their lives.
Yeah,
it's as simple as that. It's like, okay, something's happening there.
Yeah.
I should address that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there is life because it begins to form. And
exactly. Then from there, you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, and that's it. We're not in control.
And it comes back to attending. Are we attending to the Spirit? Is the church attending to all the ways that the Spirit is moving at the moment? Because the Spirit's multiple. It's moving everywhere, man.
So then what do you do to be attentive to the Spirit?
Listen.
Well, I guess in a practical way, this is a challenge for churches, is, we need to raise the question of what discernment is again.
Yeah, that's a good question.
And, a discernment, so depending, we all have different polities, church polities. Look, no one polity is better than the others. There's no. I think we've learned enough about denominationalism now to know you can have the best polity and still not work, and you can have the worst and it can work. And so I think that around this is in the polity. How do we as a leadership team, as an eldership, as a board, how are we listening to discerning here together, or is it just kind of one person having all the ideas, and we're all agreeing, or the strongest voice?
And just go for it.
So that's a posture. I think that's a posture.
That's great Baptist, man.
Eh?
You're a great Baptist.
Well, I'm not a Baptist.
You're not a Baptist.
Pentecostal. Great Pentecostal then.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this notion of that the Spirit is alive in the community. So how do we discern where the Spirit's at work?
Yeah.
That's a question.
100%.
Yeah, you got to identify. And one thing I loved
100%.
about what Mark Sayers said when he was up here at Laidlaw was, he said that he said exactly what you're saying, Jonathan,
right, okay.
which is like there's things that God is doing. He's like maturing seeds that have been planted in people.
Awesome.
And in our role, he said the exact same thing, I'm pretty sure.
Wow.
Our role is to find those things.
That's right. He's right.
Our
man.
role is to find those things. And what was crazy was when he said that, I've told you guys this, a person popped into my head, and I was like, Lord, give me a chance to speak to them, because I at least am discerning this.
Wow, that's amazing.
And then they came to me the next Sunday. And then we've got an ongoing relationship, and it's nothing flashy, but it's like a semi-formal discipleship relationship, and I can do that for one person. Within the time, I'm gesturing over to Graeme, within the time that I have.
That's cool.
And I'm just like, and it's programmatic in a sense. I'm like, yeah, we meet once a month, but it's not like, I don't know, overly programmatic. I'm not against programs. I think they're great, like Alpha and stuff like that. Excellent. It's good to do stuff like that. But I'm like, well, what's the thing that's gonna help sow seed into this era of the church in New Zealand? And I think it might be something along those lines.
I think that's right, because it takes in your idea about time. It's timely. So you're something's happening, you go with it. It's like to use church name, it's a Kairos moment, man. Get involved. It's a Kairos moment. Yeah. So, but it's timely, and also it's authentic.
Yeah.
So you're addressing what's drawing people's attention at that moment, and therefore, and also you're attending to their agenda.
Yeah.
And I think we've come to the thing of all those things: attention, timely, and agenda.
Yeah.
It comes down to moving where the Spirit's moving.
Yeah.
I put one more.
Supporting it. Yeah, do
one
it.
more. Personhood.
Yeah, it's that person.
Yeah.
That person.
You did
or
it.
that group of people need it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
And
That's
you
awesome.
came. You did it.
That's awesome.
You as a human being responded to another human being. It's like, I mean, it sounds really plain and boring, but actually, when you think about it, it's not the system responded. You heard and responded.
And it's
awesome.
It's not a superhero move, guys.
It's
No,
not.
That's
It's
the
not.
thing.
It's not. Right? You're so right, Joey.
It's actually it's undramatic, really, isn't it?
It is.
It's kind of trivial
and can be awkward. And
it's super awkward.
I don't know what, like, I've gone to school, theology and practical ministry school, for 7 years, and I still go. I'm like, what do I do?
Yeah.
I'm like, I think, but it goes back to the listening. It goes back to I like, what does this person think they need? I'm sure I'm going to add a few bits and pieces here and there,
Definitely.
but like, where's the felt need within them, right? And I guess to bring this to a macro conversation, because to end it off, we talked about, well, what's the need if we're listening to our communities, if we're listening to this country, if we're listening to broadly our context, what's the need, And it's going to be different things for different people.
Yeah.
There's going to be
that's
sub
right.
needs within the city we live in, within the community we live in.
That's right.
But like, what's the need that our churches can address? And sometimes I think it's practical, and sometimes practical isn't like, getting your hands dirty and your feet wet.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's
Spiritual.
it's intensely spiritual.
That's right.
And I know we do the spiritual very well. And some traditions do the, hands and feet of Jesus very well.
Yes.
I think it's just trying to figure out what it means.
What the need is.
What the need is.
What the need is.
which came back to that posture of being attentive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we good with that?
And it's possible that the people that are doing the material stuff may need to attend more to the spiritual.
It's true.
And the people that are attending to the spiritual stuff may need at this moment to attend more to the practical.
Yeah.
Perhaps that's the case.
It's like, I know 10 families that can't get the grocery bill done this week.
That's right.
You know, and it's as simple
Again,
as that.
it's moving. It's moving how the Spirit wants you to move at that moment and at that time.
Yeah.
Adaptability, change, flexibility.
Cool. Are
Cool,
we good with
man.
that?
Yeah,
sounds
it's great, dude.
I know it was a broad conversation, but I like broad
As
conversations.
always, we got there in the end.
As always, we got there in the end.
There's some good things to go away and think about.
I have faith that we'll get there in the end. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, man.
Thanks.